Welcome to another edition of Clarity Gems. I'm your host, Jessica Malnik, and today I'm excited to dive into it with Alex from ScaleMath. If you've ever struggled with making your homepage clear, credible, and designed to convert, this one's for you. Let's get right into it.
Hi, my name is Alex. I'm the founder of ScaleMath. We are your partner across ops, growth, and product. So we work with companies from startup to enterprise brand and help them with everything from SEO-focused content, thought leadership content, producing podcasts, email onboarding, and everything in between. Everything that falls under the customer acquisition and experience umbrella falls under our remit. How we work with companies differs based on the size of the company and their original team makeup, which is why I'm looking forward to diving into this messaging and positioning conversation with Jessica, because we've toyed with tons of different ways of positioning ourselves over the years. And I think there's an element of trade-off with whichever angle we take.
Yeah, I could not agree more, and I'm really excited to dive into your homepage today. Before I kind of share my screen, when was the last time you updated your website?
We have never really focused a lot on our website. Before the new year, we rolled out, we switched over to a new build system in WordPress, which was when also we gave it a slight design revamp, and we built out the new design system, which is currently running on the site. At that time, we started focusing on a few key pages, but on the homepage even, I'd say the area that's gotten the most attention is the hero area. And then on the about pages, similarly, we focused on like telling the story. I think in terms of actual layout and what is on the site, we haven't given it that much time, because for us, the majority of business comes from my personal network and referrals. But of course, this is also something that we are prioritizing because it is really important, both for existing customers. I think that's worthwhile to say for listeners is you're not just positioning for your acquisition of new customers, but it's also really important for existing companies that you work with to understand how you actually serve and help companies, because it changes over the years. So
yeah, absolutely. And something I see all the time is, particularly when an agency owner has a very strong personal brand like you do, Alex, is there's often a disconnect between that personal brand and your LinkedIn profile and maybe what's on your website. And oftentimes, without even realizing it, your website positioning could actually be creating confusion and leading to potential people who would, want to work with you, or maybe or even deals that have stalled out. Have you ever seen that happen before?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, we have we have a relatively strong footing in one vertical, which is WordPress. So that's most of my personal connections and also the existing companies that we work with for a long time were in that space. And I'd say like 4 years ago or so, we started branching out more into just traditional B2B SaaS outside of WordPress. There's tons of reasons behind that, which I could go into it in more detail. It's a whole 1 hour conversation of its own. But definitely, I'd say in terms of the people that know me and what I do versus, and also just in general, what my interests are, what I do as a person versus what an engagement with ScaleMath looks like is quite wide. So a lot of people know of, or a lot, obviously, in our circle, in our small circle of people in our industry know of me, but then they don't actually know, oh, what does working with us actually look like? And I think getting that from especially when it's bespoke services, communicating that on a website and showing just the right amount of detail of like, oh, this is what an engagement could look like is quite a challenge.
Yeah, absolutely. And I'm going to assume that, kind of to your point, your core audience is, WordPress businesses, and then second audience is B2B SaaS. So with that, I'm going to go ahead and share my screen and be able to take a look at your homepage. So the first thing I see on the homepage is startups is your H1, which is startups choose ScaleMath to take them from 0 to category leaders, bring us into scale to get category leaders, bring us into scale together. That's a tongue twister right there. One thing that automatically stands out to me is you say startups, which is super broad. But then if you just reference our conversation just now, it was WordPress and B2B SaaS. Any reason why you went that broad with the hero as startups and not just saying specifically who you're for?
Yeah, absolutely. So we like in terms of who we currently serve, I think there is a little bit of a bias towards, oh, this is what we do. And we were much more specific. We even, like here doesn't necessarily mention even software startups, for example. And we've broadened it because we realized that the ICP we're talking to generally doesn't refer to themselves as tech startups or SaaS companies. They just call themselves a startup. And to them, like again, kind of tunnel vision mode, the only startup is a startup that is a software company. They don't think of an e-commerce startup as a startup. They would just categorize that as an e-commerce brand. So it came from a little bit of like how the companies that we were talking to refer to themselves, and also why we're not specifically boxing ourselves into B2B as a category is because or as a specialization is because the services we offer aren't really limited to B2B. It just so happens that insofar through happenstance or luck or whatever you want to call it, we have just attracted a lot of B2B companies. I think that's by virtue of conferences and my networking that I just connect with more people in that space. But there's no reason that we couldn't serve companies that work that aren't necessarily B2B.
Yeah. You don't have to answer this, but to be a little bit blunt, but also nice. Do you think you might actually be almost diluting your positioning and almost sounding like every other agency by saying we work with startups as opposed to just being like, hey, we're actually for these two specific types of niches, and just saying that just right on your homepage, being, it's so explicitly clear, and it doesn't mean necessarily that you have to only work with those companies, but you just make it so much more likely that they're going to self-select.
That's a good question. I love the conversation. We're both like positioning and messaging people, so I think it's like challenging my own thinking is really interesting. So I can share a bit more behind my thought process with this headline. There's like a couple of interesting components, if I may like pull apart. So it is like when you read it, it was interesting to see you read it because I think it comes across as longer and a tongue twister, which to me is like, my first thought when I saw or heard you read it was, can we distill this down into something shorter? But for me, the first and the way that we even split it up in the visual hierarchy of the two sentences is startups choose ScaleMath to take them from 0 to 1. 0 to 1 is like a very okay, a startup going from 0 to 1 is something that people in tech and in SaaS know. And then the category leaders bring us into scale together is us leaning into the fact that we had a lot of confusion surrounding, okay, what type of company works with us? Is it a startup which doesn't have a growth team, or is it a category leader or a company that wants to see themselves as a category leader that already has an in-house team? And the reality is that it's not even as black and white as like, oh, one company is a startup and one company is a category leader. It's a whole spectrum, and we fit and like plug into the ops growth and product side of things at those organizations in very different ways. So like the way that our services and advisory side is split up is by what we call AORs, so area of responsibility. I don't think that's not really a fundamentally unique concept. But so then what happens is like we have a bigger company that has people dedicated to email, may have people dedicated to customer success, or we work with a company that doesn't have people dedicated to email, in which case more stuff falls under our remit, our areas of responsibility. So I was trying with the headline of getting that across of like, okay, we don't just work with startups or category leaders. As in like, it's not one or the other. It's not a selection of like, we can't, because we work with startups, we're not well suited to help the bigger teams, because the work that we do at the quality level that we strive to do it's independent like of whether it's a bigger company or a smaller company. In fact, I think you can probably relate. The smaller companies are often the more difficult ones to work with because the bar and the expectation is a lot higher. Whereas in bigger, organizations, there's so much going on already that it often ends up being a little bit easier.
Yeah, you kind of just nailed kind of my next question, which was it almost feels like that H1 is trying to do too much, which I see all the time. And I totally get what you're saying there, but like going from 0 to 1 in category leaders are almost kind of fighting each other. So I almost wonder if there's a way to simplify it and be like, hey, we help, would it be like we help B2B SaaS and WordPress companies go from zero to scale or something like that, that is a little bit simpler. And then you can use your subhead right there, which right now it says, imagine your dream ops growth and product team, now meet them. I like it, but it doesn't really tell me if I'm a buyer, if I am a VP of marketing or CMO at a company, I don't really know what that means. So I almost wonder if, you can almost replace that line and say something like, okay, now you can just clarify, we work with everyone from, pre-product market fit to category leaders. And that point, you can already say that and be like, and we're your growth and product team on demand. That sort of thing, something like that. What do you think?
I agree. I've gone back and forth with it. I think there's like an element of a part of me. I'll say the reason we don't do it like this currently, and I agree with you that in some senses that's definitely the better direction. But the reason I was against that was I think it's a bit on the nose in the sense that it's very like I have not seen anybody else, and perhaps there's reasons for this, say, startups choose us as a company to take them from 0 to 1, category leaders bring us in to scale together. I have seen a lot of companies say like, oh, we help B2B SaaS brands grow with SEO focused content marketing. So for better or worse, the element of like differentiation, which is so difficult in the services space, was a big element here of like, okay, in fact, we don't want to look at ourselves as among the sea of other agencies and service providers out there. Like, how do we want to position ourselves, and what is our whole, beyond just, what we strive to do, like how do we actually structure our engagements and how are we built to serve companies, is beyond just, oh, a company comes in and we have like a set of deliverables that we put together and we aim to keep them for X number of months, and that sort of typical agency culture. Like, we even in the entire site, you'll even see like we try never to refer to ourselves as an agency, and we always use the moniker of advisory and services agency, because I think the agency moniker itself has quite a like, oh, they're an agency, therefore they compete with XYZ other agencies that are in our consideration set. So actually, which might be the wrong thing to do. You're absolutely talking about a very valid point there, is we have chosen to position ourselves outside of the category of agency with the intention of basically saying we're not an agency. We don't work like an agency. We plug into your team. We're an embedded ops growth and product hire. And I join the companies that we work with as an advisor, but also by extension, our team is there to support me in all of the work that we do. And I think what you're saying is, have we gone too far in the direction of being different, perhaps for the sake of it? And that puts us into a category where people are like, well, what on earth actually are you? Which I agree with. I think that's like the main trade-off with what we've done, definitely.
I love the whole being different, because you've nailed it. There's so many agencies and advisory firms out there that sound exactly the same. Like, I've lost count of the number of times I've seen, or the number of times I've worked with and also seen agency sites that you could basically swap out the text for one or the other, and you would have no idea that it wasn't actually that company. So I think, love the idea of category of one, makes a ton of sense. I almost wonder if just tightening up just a little bit, where even if your H1 was going from 0 to scale or something like that, and then you just make your subhead a little bit longer. Like, I don't see a problem with making your sub description being, 2 or 3 sentences and saying something along the lines of, we help WordPress and B2B SaaS companies who are go from either pre-product market fit all the way up to category leaders scale more efficiently as your dream ops growth and product team on demand. Something like that, where it's like just a little bit cleaner, where you're already saying all the right things, but it just makes it a little bit easier to categorize, okay, am I a good fit to work with ScaleMath?
Yeah, absolutely. We have actually, I was trying to pull it up now in the background, but I couldn't find it in Figma. We have a bunch of designs of this hero, which included, we didn't do it because we felt it was a bit cluttered, but we are still working on iterating on it so that we can do it in a more tasteful way, which was what you're saying is there's so much more to say in the hero section that we're not currently saying, which is, could we even like in addition to mentioning specific things that we do or help with, is what have we accomplished? So it's like design components of specific metrics, assigning KPIs to what we've done. So it's like improving an onboarding sequence. And the reason we haven't, this is again behind the way our whole business model is that's like one component of what we've done in 1 month of like a 3-year relationship with a client. We've worked on their product onboarding. And as a part of that, we may have increased activation rates. But for us, that's like one part of it. So like even the 2 brands mentioned here, there's so many individual KPIs that we could pull out, or things that we haven't done yet in terms of like presenting, oh, we did X for this company, and this was the impact thereafter. And I think there is an element of that in addition to what you're saying of like, there could be more text here within reason of communicating what we do, the whole benefits versus features thing. So like, I guess a feature in service world would be like a KPI, and then a benefit could be, we do it for less money than hiring an in-house team, which will cost like a minimum of like 20-30K to get multiple people in each discipline to do what we would be already like fully staffed to do essentially.
Yeah, absolutely. And we can continue scaling. We can continue talking about this for a while, but I almost want to kind of get into your CPA button and definitely these testimonials right here, or kind of case studies. One, have you tested something I've seen all the time and something that tends to work very well is testing between get started, particularly for a service business like yours, testing between get started, a schedule a call, contact. Have you tried any other CTAs besides get started?
Not yet, but actually the schedule a call one is one. It's a test we should definitely run, because I think this whole point of like, okay, I mean, if you want, you can hit get started. It doesn't take you to another page. You'll keep you on this page, and that will bring up a modal. And this is a point of feedback we've gotten a lot. Is like the very first step is this, but then there's another step where you're not taken away from this page, but you're asked to fill out a relatively long application. Well, I guess it's not that long, but like for a lead that's busy, it's a couple of questions that we're asking. At this point, we already have that email, so we enroll them, and I would get back in touch with them personally. But this is like a big step versus maybe just name, email, and then they hit next and they're told to book a call directly. So definitely, because like for full transparency, it's not like we have thousands of leads coming in through this form yet. So there's no risk of like, oh, if I put a cal.com link in here, I could just as easily, hop on the calls. And there's a benefit to doing that anyway of meeting people in the industry. So
yeah, I love it. So kind of moving into this, a couple questions. I like the idea of having pre-qualifiers, and I think you've actually done this in a pretty slick way where you're asking bootstrap or raising capital. Totally understand why you're doing it. I almost wonder if since you already lean into having it be optional, is this better to just ask about competitors on a discovery call? Because you potentially, I get why you're doing it, but also it could just be filtering out people if you want to optimize for more calls. And this question right here makes you seem like an order taker, as opposed to what I think you guys are, which is True. You're really setting the strategy, you're being the advisor, you're doing the work. And if you have to say, what are your priorities at the moment? There's a better way to phrase that, or even just leave it all entirely if you don't want to do that right off the bat. So you don't come across as just another agency, because that candidly is how you come across right now. And everything in this conversation tells me that's not how you want to be. And then how soon are you looking to get started? That's a great question to ask. I can totally understand why you're doing that. And then you just click apply and let's see what happens next. Oh, thanks for reaching out. Yeah, this is great. Maybe a little long, but I really like how you have it automatically go through a confirmation page. Super smart.
Yeah, no, sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off there. I was just going to say regarding the form, that's a very good point about the like, what are your priorities? At the end of the day, right now, I think you're totally right. The more we can remove here is probably the better. And then just get more people on a call to have more feedback, like more of a feedback loop of what we ultimately need to do, because the whole thought process behind what are your competitors now is I wanted to get an idea of the person I'm getting on the call with, how much do they know about their own business? Because sometimes it's not the founder or the CEO, it's an internal champion. It could be a marketing specialist who's tasked with putting together a list of companies. So that's basically what I was filtering for here. And then before the call, I'm always doing more research. But case in point, the actual sales process should be more like get on the call, get to know them on the call, and then this like what are your competitors and doing the deep research should happen after. Because from our point of view as well, everybody that fills out this form, out of pure interest, I do the research, but realistically, I should wait until we get onto the call and do the research after that initial call. So yeah.
Yeah, I love it. And I mean, I would not even hate it if you just had, are you bootstrapping or are you raising or have you raised capital and how soon are you looking to get started? These two questions are great, but I almost could see just playing devil's advocate. If you're asking about competitors or how are you better, you almost could, in some cases, be, particularly if it was like a marketing manager or someone, mid-level or even entry level, because I know a lot of times, particularly CMOs will task like a marketing coordinator with doing the initial research. You can almost make them feel almost insecure. It's like, oh, I don't know how, maybe they don't necessarily, maybe they just started at the company and they don't even fully know yet how they're better. And you almost might be raising doubts. So yeah, I would maybe like move that into the discovery questions.
Yeah, and also we're giving them work to do where realistically they should just want to get us to do that work anyway. So
totally. And then kind of another question that I had for you is I love the fact that you showcase two of the customers that clients you work with. Big fan, just as more of a subtle thing of either doing like, one kind of big case study and having it like linked to them, or just putting like, rows of 3 tends to be just a little bit smarter, tends to be a little bit more eye-catching and stopping the scroll and getting people to actually take notice, as opposed to 2 right now, where it just feels kind of random as part of the H1, as part of the hero section, but not fully there.
Yeah, I totally agree. We have a couple of more case studies, and we're also planning to do videos for the ones that we can. So like, you'll notice this is just a proof of how work in progress this is. The Atherim one is linked to something, but the RankMath one isn't. But also these elements visually don't make it obvious that they're clickable. And also this layout here, the whole content of this page is very much a work in progress. So this needs to be revisited completely. But yeah, definitely the case studies aren't featured enough. Also, I don't know. I agree. I would say why only feature 2? If there's a way we can visually feature more and link to all of them, and then subsequently those pages that are linked have more than just what the basic layout that there is now. I definitely think that's like a huge, like not just authority indicator, but just, oh, these companies work with them. Let me click through, see what they've done for all of those companies, basically. Yeah.
I'm probably gonna butcher the company's name, but Atherim, since you already have a case study, you have a video. Why not just literally just lead with that? It's super strong already. Have that in there. Maybe have a link, maybe have like a little icon or a thumbnail with the video on there, and just have it be the next, right after the hero section, you go straight to that case study. Because that just gives you social proof right off of the bat. And then maybe you have one for RankMath and 2 or 3 more that you put further down in the homepage. Typically, let's look down on your page a little bit more. Oh, cool. You have testimonials, awesome. Maybe adding in a case study right above it, or right below it. Yeah. And then another one right above, let's take your product from nice to have to an absolute must have. Yeah. Have another batch of case studies right here. And then maybe even just move the testimonials down to right even below that and right by the footer. So you're just stacking social proof and showcasing, oh, ScaleMath is not only legit, but they have so many customers that are clamoring to work with them that have given them results. Thoughts?
What are your thoughts on gated case studies? So I see that a lot in B2B SaaS itself. It's like becoming more of a thing. Is see how we helped take X to achieve this result for X company, and I put that behind an email opt-in. Do you think that's have you seen that work well, or?
Yeah, I would say if you have the case studies and you have the approval to share their name, like you do with Atherim, and I'm guessing a bunch of others, especially if you just turn testimonials into full-on case studies, that's something that's just like a pretty easy lift. And you can do that yourself and put that in there. I would say in those cases, lean with them and don't gate them, just because it's going to give you more social proof, and it's going to make you stand out from every other agency and every other advisory firm out there. Now, where I think gated case studies can work really well is if you have maybe, you know, an internal champion who's like, yeah, thrilled to work with you, but doesn't necessarily want the case study public, but it's cool to share it one-on-one. That's when I would say gated case study.
Awesome.
Or if you have a bunch of anonymous ones, that's another one where you can maybe be like, okay, like put that as a gated case study as well. But I would probably lead with your best stuff if you can.
Makes total sense. Yeah.
Yeah. So we kind of covered the H1, we covered the subscription, we covered maybe changing this to schedule a call in that form, and then all of these. I like this section, but maybe clarify a little bit more. And it could even just be changing the icons into like screenshots or something like that to just kind of showcase exactly what ScaleMath does, as opposed to just being a laundry list of deliverables.
Yeah, yeah. I have to be honest. I'm a little bit of a perfectionist at heart, and this section, it's seeing you share your screen showing this section hurts me inside a little bit because I think it's really bad. I think it's good to because it's like the whole premise of like, oh, we're not defined by a list of X services, but we've been pressed so many times to ask of like, okay, so you're not limited to certain things, but what are examples of some things? So I want to turn this whole, mid section of this page into, perhaps like a typical, illustration or image on the left and text on the right section of like, this is what we do, or not necessarily illustration, like actual example linked, and then talk about what we did as opposed to literally just, service name and a very short description, because I think this is going back to the whole commoditization of it. If you want just copywriting, or if you want just a website, then don't come to us, because that's not necessarily the things that people come to us for. They come to us for a variety of things. If of course we do those services, but it's typically not in isolation. So I think that's like right now they don't tell a story, and I think it's a missed opportunity, to put it simply.
Yeah, you nailed it. And just to emphasize that, maybe just instead of having it be a laundry list of deliverables, which makes you seem like a commodity, which you're not, just be like, here's an example engagement. Or it could be like, if you have 3 or 4 different types, which I suspect you might, be like, here are 3 different ways, and then that just through a little bit of design, be like, here are 3 typical ways that companies tend to work with us. Maybe you have one that is pretty product market fit. You have another one that is going from like 1 to 10, and another one that is a category leader. And to showcase, this is an example engagement. And then suddenly you're no longer, just the commodity deliverables agency. You're actually, studying strategy. You're actually doing the execution, and it becomes so incredibly obvious how a marketer can actually see that, or even a product person can see that and be like, oh, this is how ScaleMath is perfect for us.
Yeah, I'm so glad that we had this conversation, because it's validating a lot of the things that we're currently working on. So having like the page will likely end up being scalemath.com/startups. And then that page have messaging that's very tied into our positioning for startups and the whole, taking software startups from 0 to 1, so that we don't have the like 2 headlines in theory, or 2 sentences competing with each other, and we can really zero in all of the messaging, all of the case studies on that page to those types of companies, and give examples of like engagement structure, and also perhaps even allude a little bit more to like what the setup would look like, where and then on another page where we have not planned yet content wise, but there would be like a enterprise or bigger company page where it's a existing team where they want to bring us in for a small specific thing, and have us focus on that as opposed to own more of the entire function.
Yeah, I think having 2 separate landing pages, one for like pre-product market fit companies and one for more category leaders, is smart. However, I will challenge you very nicely to say you still want to have both on your homepage. So I think it still would make sense to at least entertain the thought experiment of, hey, here are the 3 different things, and making sure that we are specifying, or even if it's just 2, pre-product market fit and category leaders, and having that be right on your homepage. And then, yes, you can go into a landing page afterwards. Although I would definitely caution with how many CTAs you have on your homepage. because
Yeah.
that, in my experience, can just cause analysis paralysis and cause nothing to happen. But yeah, I would definitely, encourage you to have it both on your homepage as well.
Amazing.
Cool. And before we wrap up, kind of going back through here, none of the companies we work with are average, but on average they scale with us for 5+ years. A little funky, maybe to say, hey, most of the companies we work with us for 5+ years. That gives you instant credibility, and is super unique for a company like yourself. That is something I would just lean with and just tighten up that wording. I like the testimonials, but I think at this fact you have even better case studies. So I would maybe lean with, 3 case studies where you have, these are long-term customers that we've worked with here, and then just move these testimonials, which are so great, by the way, to like write either above or below the the footer, and or kind of that final call to action again, and maybe changing this to schedule a call. But is there anything else before we wrap?
No, I totally agree. I think, yeah, I mean, in terms of experimentation, this is like a big thing here. Like even the benefits in that final call to action block, like I don't even remember off the top of my head what they say. But like a full stacks in your team, you get us, not just one person that's good at one thing. Like we're always, that like tweaking the messaging there. I think I couldn't agree more with regards to the individual testimonials in the context of a service like this. It's not that they're not relevant, but I agree. I think it deserves to be more in like sort of like a visual aesthetic thing, whereas the focus should be more on each of the companies and the results, and maybe like a small 1 or 2 sentence testimonial from the founder of those companies. But the ones that we currently have are far too like disconnected from what we actually do. So totally agree.
Yeah. Absolutely. It's been really great chatting with you and diving into your homepage. Any final thoughts?
No, I'm glad. Thank you very much for taking the time. It was a pleasure to do this and be your guinea pig for this new show.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Alex.